Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that is sending shockwaves through every corner of the United States. A story that's not just about politics, but about the very foundation of American democracy and the money in your pocket. In August 2025, the United States finds itself in the midst of a constitutional crisis that's hitting home for millions of Americans. The question at the center: who truly holds the power to impose tariffs that affect the price of everyday goods? Congress, as outlined in the Constitution, or the President, acting alone in the name of national security? This debate is no longer theoretical. It's become a reality that's impacting families, businesses, and the nation's economy. President Trump, invoking rarely used emergency powers, has imposed sweeping tariffs on a wide range of imports. Most notably, a staggering 50% tariff now applies to goods from India, one of America's key trading partners. The move has sent shockwaves through global markets and left both allies and rivals questioning America's commitment to free trade. The administration insists these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair foreign competition. Supporters argue that bold action is needed to revive domestic manufacturing and restore economic independence. But critics, including many business leaders and economists, warn that this is an unprecedented abuse of executive power, one that's driving up costs for consumers, disrupting supply chains, and creating uncertainty for small businesses already struggling to survive. This isn't just a policy fight. It's a fundamental test of the separation of powers at the heart of American democracy. The question of who controls the nation's economic destiny is now before the highest court in the land. Billions of dollars, the livelihoods of countless Americans, and the very future of presidential authority hang in the balance as the Supreme Court prepares to weigh in. Their decision could set a precedent that will shape the balance of power between Congress and the President for generations to come. From the factory floors where workers worry about layoffs to supermarket aisles where families are shocked by rising prices, the impact of this crisis is immediate and deeply personal. Every American is feeling the effects, whether they realize it or not. This is the story of a legal and political battle that could redefine the presidency, reshape the economy, and alter the course of American history for generations to come. To understand this crisis, we look to the Constitution. The framers, wary of unchecked executive power, gave Congress, not the President, the authority to tax and regulate trade. Article 1, Section 8 is clear: Congress sets tariffs and trade rules. This ensures economic decisions are debated by elected representatives, not imposed by a single leader. While Congress has sometimes delegated limited tariff powers, the core authority has always remained on Capitol Hill. The current conflict challenges this tradition, raising fears of an unchecked executive and economic instability. Critics warn letting one person rewrite trade policy could erode the very foundation of American governance. President Trump used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to justify sweeping tariffs. IEEPA was meant for true emergencies like sanctions on hostile states, not for broad economic disputes. Trump's administration declared trade deficits a national emergency, vastly expanding the law's scope. This sidestepped Congress and set a new precedent. Could any economic rivalry now be called an emergency? Legal experts argue IEEPA was never meant to let presidents overhaul tariff policy alone. If this stands, what limits remain on presidential power? The legal challenge centers on whether the president can use emergency powers to tax Americans without Congress. The nation is split. Supporters say the president needs flexibility to act fast in a cutthroat global economy. Congress is too slow. They argue IEEPA gives the president the tools to defend American jobs and industries. Critics, including business owners and legal scholars, call this a dangerous overreach, warning it dismantles the separation of powers. They say tariffs are a hidden tax on Americans, raising prices and hurting businesses. The real question: should one person have the power to reshape the economy without Congress? When the tariffs hit, businesses across the country felt the impact immediately. Many owners already struggling to stay afloat saw their costs skyrocket and their customer base shrink. Frustrated and desperate for relief, they banded together and filed lawsuits, arguing that the president had gone too far, claiming he had overstepped the boundaries set by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. Their legal challenge wasn't just about dollars and cents, it was about the limits of presidential power and the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. The Court of International Trade took up the case, examining whether the president's actions truly fit the definition of a national emergency. After careful review, the court sided with the businesses, ruling that trade deficits alone did not justify invoking emergency powers. The decision sent shockwaves through Washington, as it directly challenged the administration's authority to impose sweeping tariffs under IEEPA. Refusing to back down, the administration quickly appealed the ruling. As the legal battle intensified, the tariffs remained in place, continuing to affect businesses and consumers nationwide. The case began to climb the judicial ladder, drawing national attention and sparking heated debate about the scope of executive power. The Federal Circuit Court of Appeals decided to hear the case en banc, meaning all active judges would weigh in, a rare move that underscored just how significant the stakes had become. Legal experts and the public alike watched closely, knowing the outcome could reshape the balance of power between Congress and the president. During oral arguments, judges from across the ideological spectrum pressed both sides with tough questions. They probed the limits of executive authority, asking whether any president should have the power to unilaterally declare economic emergencies and impose far-reaching policies without congressional approval. With the stakes higher than ever, the case finally reached the Supreme Court. Outside, crowds of journalists, advocates, and everyday citizens gathered, all waiting to see how the justices would interpret the Constitution and the future of presidential power. Dozens of advocacy groups, legal scholars, and former government officials filed briefs, most warning that unchecked presidential authority could set a dangerous precedent. The debate extended far beyond the courtroom, touching on fundamental questions about democracy, accountability, and the rule of law. Now the stage is set for a Supreme Court ruling that could define the limits of the presidency for generations to come, shaping not just trade policy, but the very nature of American government. Tariffs aren't just legal theory, they hit home. A tariff is a tax on imports, and those costs trickle down to consumers. Businesses face higher prices for materials, making it harder to plan, hire, or grow. Families pay more for everything from electronics to groceries. Industries from tech to winemaking have been squeezed, with some Republican-leaning groups joining the opposition. Economists say most of the cost is borne by Americans, not foreign exporters. The promise to protect jobs is complicated. Many jobs relying on imports are now at risk. The Supreme Court now stands at a pivotal moment in American legal history. At the heart of the case is a defining question. Can the president invoke the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, to impose sweeping tariffs simply by declaring an economic rivalry a national emergency? This is not just a technical legal debate, it's a test of the very boundaries of presidential authority and the checks and balances that underpin the U.S. Constitution. The administration argues that in an era of global uncertainty, the president must have broad executive power, especially when national security is at stake. They claim that economic threats can be just as dangerous as military ones, and that swift, decisive action is sometimes necessary to protect American interests. But opponents warn that allowing such power would sideline Congress, undermining its constitutional role in matters of trade and taxation. They urge the court to reaffirm that only Congress has the authority to levy taxes and regulate commerce, as the framers intended. The justices now face a momentous decision. Their ruling will set a precedent for generations to come, either expanding presidential power in the name of national security, or reinforcing the separation of powers that has defined American government for over 2 centuries. If the White House prevails, future presidents could bypass Congress on major economic policy decisions, reshaping the balance of power between the branches of government and potentially changing how America responds to global economic threats. On the other hand, if the court sides with Congress, it will reaffirm the legislative branch's exclusive authority to tax and regulate trade, preserving a crucial check on executive power and ensuring that no single branch can act unilaterally on such critical issues. The Supreme Court's decision will not only resolve a pressing legal dispute, it will shape the balance of power in Washington for the 21st century, influencing how America governs itself in an increasingly complex world. This case is about more than tariffs. It's a test of American democracy. The Supreme Court's decision will draw a new line between presidential and congressional power. It's a choice between swift executive action and deliberative representative government. The outcome will affect every American's cost of living and the stability of the economy. The fight shows how constitutional questions shape daily life. The ruling will set a lasting precedent on emergency powers and the separation of powers. At its core, this is a fight over the rules that govern America, and its impact will echo for generations.